Good Times viewers have wondered, for years, what happened between Jimmie Walker and Esther Rolle, the show's two leading ladies, that caused them to be so antagonistic. What happened off-screen was significantly more complicated than what people know, even though the program had classic moments and delivered laughter. While Jimmie Walker has been very quiet up until this point, Esther Rolle has been quite outspoken about her opinions. However, Walker, who is now 78 years old, is coming clean about their tense working relationship, and the truth he exposes questions long-held beliefs. His comments startled Hollywood and broke the hush. The explosive adventure of Jimmie Walker. James Carter Walker Jr., commonly known as Jimmie Walker, was born on June 25, 1947, in Brooklyn, New York. He rose from modest origins to become a household name in television comedy. As a child growing up in the Bronx, Walker experienced firsthand the struggles of urban working-class America. He got his start in the technological world at Theodore Roosevelt High School, where he studied radio engineering as part of a federal job training program. His future career would be greatly aided by this early exposure to the world of radio. Walker had found employment as a radio technician at WRVR in New York by the late 1960s. Although his behind-the-scenes work in radio was significant, it was not the ultimate objective. The performing arts beckoned to him because of his quick wit and analytical mind. After concluding his stint at the radio, he started performing late at night at tiny clubs all across New York to try out his content. Those unglamorous early stand-up acts laid the groundwork for a career in entertainment that would last a lifetime. Walker reached a crossroads in his life in the early 1970s. Television producers took notice of his distinctive style as word of his stand-up acts spread. The part that would shape his career came in 1972. Good Times, a CBS comedy, starred James J.J. Evans Jr., the work of the great television producer Norman Lear. The show's portrayal of a black family from a Chicago housing project, who were working class, was revolutionary. Thanks to his physical humor, humorous timing, and most famously, his catchphrase, "Dynamite," Walker's character, J.J., the eldest son, rose to stardom. Good Times was the most-watched TV show of 1974 to 1979, and it was all revolved on Jimmie Walker. His iconic persona was born from his unusual sense of style, eccentric clothing, and inflated facial emotions. While the program was at its peak in 1975, Walker solidified his position as one of television's most talked-about performers with a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor in a television series. However, even though J.J. earned him notoriety, but it also sparked debate and strife. The character was heavily criticized for being overly cartoonish, which some said detracted from the show's intended exploration of serious subjects. However, Walker claimed that the show's comedic elements were crucial to its success, and that his role provided comic relief to viewers at a time when favorable portrayals of marginalized groups were still uncommon in popular culture. Whatever your opinion on him, you can't deny the impact he had on television entertainment. Walker continued to be a household name in the United States even after Good Times ended in 1979. His television appearances spanned the late 1970s and early 1980s, appearing on a broad range of talk shows, variety shows, and game shows. Guest starring on hit shows like Fantasy Island and The Love Boat, he was able to reach new demographics with his trademark brand of humor. He remained in the limelight even after the Good Times ended, thanks to his charisma and comic sensibilities, which made him a popular guest on talk shows. As the media landscape evolved in the 2000s, Walker made yet another pivot. Additionally, he started making appearances on radio and political talk shows while continuing to sing live. Although his conservative political beliefs shocked many of his long-standing followers, Walker went on to become a prominent pundit, providing viewpoints that occasionally clashed with the conventional Hollywood narrative. His trademark forthrightness was on full display as he spoke frankly about a broad variety of topics, frequently igniting controversy. He revealed a new side of the performer, one motivated not by popularity but by conviction, by standing firmly by his views, no matter how controversial they were. Jimmie Walker's autobiography, Dynamite, was released in 2012. Through good times and bad, we have resided. His unvarnished account of his rise to stardom, his tangled web of relationships with his Good Times co-stars, and his wider reflections on race, humor, and American culture were all presented in the book. In addition to being a first-person narrative, it documented the culture of American entertainment in the 1970s and beyond. Thanks to its refreshing candor, Walker's memoir garnered praise from both fans and critics and rekindled curiosity in her life narrative. Walker kept busy all through the 2010s and far into 2020s. Even though many of his contemporaries retired, he kept performing stand-up comedy at festivals, comedy clubs, and events centered around nostalgia. Listeners got a glimpse of him in a more contemplative stage of his career through his appearances on specials and podcasts. Intelligent, perceptive, and brimming with anecdotes from a lifetime of work in the field. Despite having been in the entertainment industry for over half a century, Walker's magnetic stage presence and interview charisma never faded. Even if Jimmie Walker's career has lasted for a long time and happy times have had a cultural impact, he has nonetheless faced issues and problems along the way to stardom. Walker was both the center of attention and the target of increasing scrutiny as the sitcom's popularity skyrocketed in the 1970s. A more nuanced portrait of the actor whose one word, dynamite, once made America laugh emerged from what happened behind the scenes and in the decades that followed. The wonderful moments that propelled Walker to stardom had unforeseen repercussions. As he portrays JJ, although Evans's eccentric portrayal, which he fans adored, caused friction among the cast and the show's producers, it was also a major source of entertainment for many viewers. The show's evolution left Esther Rolle and John Amos, who played JJ's mother Florida Evans and the family patriarch James Evans, respectively, very unhappy. They held the belief that the initial goal of Good Times was to show a resilient Black family dealing with significant societal and economic challenges. They had tried to convey gravity and respect to their parts, but they thought that the attention on JJ's buffoonish humor undermined those efforts. Jimmie Walker, in contrast, had a different perspective. He discussed the creative strain in interviews and in his memoir from 2012, Dynamite, Good Times, Bad Times, Our Times, but he still stood by his character, highlighting the significance of humor and its ability to captivate viewers. He did, however, concede that the vibe on site was anything from welcoming. The cast was never really tight, he said, and he felt mostly alone throughout filming. He said that there had been only a lingering gap and no major disputes or violent confrontations. Disagreements over work rather than personal feuds defined the atmosphere at this company. But the disconnection was profound. Public expectations for Walker's role as a possible advocate for social concerns rose in tandem with his popularity as an entertainer. Many people thought Walker was involved in political movements or campaigns since Good Times discussed issues like urban strife, poverty, and systematic racism. Walker, however, always kept his distance from any activity like that. He made it plain in interviews and his memoir that he never considered himself an activist for racial rights. Instead of getting involved with political or social issues, he said he was more interested in humor and his own achievement. Some African Americans felt that public people, particularly those whose careers were launched on socially conscious content, should have spoken out more, and they criticized this position. The fact that Walker publicly attacked prominent civil rights figures like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton only made matters worse. He said he didn't agree with their philosophy and tactics and didn't support the way they advocated. Despite his assurances that these were only his views, the criticism was immediate and severe. A lot of people were taken aback, if not outright dismayed, by how disconnected the program seemed from the Black experience and the challenges that had molded it. While running for president in 2012 and 2016, Walker's political leanings were more apparent. Specifically, his statement on the O'Reilly factor about his inability to vote for Barack Obama garnered a lot of attention. The remark stunned many, especially since the actor had risen to fame on a sitcom about a Black working-class family. It appeared to contradict the principles that many connected with his movie reputation. The story went viral, with Walker becoming the subject of a heated national debate on Fox News and other major networks. His position was seen by some as a betrayal of the community that had welcomed him many years before, while others lauded his candor and lack of involvement in party politics. The fact that Walker touched on delicate societal topics like same-sex marriage and abortion only served to heighten the difficulty. Both of them he openly opposed in public interviews, asserting that these were his personal views, even if he had no political agenda. The LGBTQ+ community and younger viewers, who were hoping for a more progressive stance, were the most vocal in their disapproval of his comments. The remarks further alienated Walker from his supporters, who had previously seen him as a symbol of inclusive change, even though he insisted he was only expressing his personal viewpoint and not trying to promote a larger agenda. Good Times lost an ally in Esther. Not only was Esther Rolle gifted, but she also entered the entertainment industry with principles, dedication, and a steadfast resolve to show the African American experience in a dignified light. She was an integral part of Good Times, and when she left, it changed the dynamic among the ensemble and the show's trajectory. Because the difficulties of working in a business that frequently put money above authenticity were brought to light by the creative conflicts with producers and co-stars. It was becoming more and more apparent that Rolle's impact went much beyond the script. But she had a history that predated her time on television. Esther Rolle was born to Bahamian immigrants on November 8, 1920, in Pompano Beach, Florida. She was the 10th of 18 children. She was brought up in a very devout home, which instilled in her a strong sense of discipline and values. These traits would shape her future responsibilities and career perspective. She learned early on the value of education, family, and community. These pillars formed the basis of her subsequent roles, particularly that of Florida Evans, the moral core of the party. Rolle relocated to New York City in the 1940s and 1950s and devoted herself fully to the arts and academia. Both Spelman College and the New School were renowned for their progressive ethos and rigorous academic programs, where she attended. Rolle, in contrast to many of her contemporaries, sought out parts that pushed the envelope of social convention and required profound emotional investment. By being a part of the Harlem theatrical community, she was able to collaborate with other budding Black performers and playwrights who shared her dedication to accurately depicting the African-American experience. When Rolle joined the esteemed Negro Ensemble Company in the 1950s and 1960s, her career in theater started to take off. She took part in a slew of plays about race, family, and self-discovery as a member of this collective. In 1968, she became famous for her performance in James Baldwin's stunning play The Amen Corner, which was one of her early triumphs. She was already well known for her powerful stage presence, conviction, and voice, but this performance solidified her position as a serious and esteemed theater actor. Norman Lear cast her as Maude Finley's maid, Florida Evans, in the CBS sitcom Maude in the early 1970s, marking her television debut. Audiences immediately related to Rolle's performance because of the authenticity and moral clarity she gave to the part. A 1974 spin-off, Good Times, was created based on the character due to his popularity. Being the first primetime sitcom to depict a two-parent African-American household, this new show centered around Florida Evans and her family. For American television in general and Black viewers in particular, Rolle's portrayal of the matriarch was revolutionary. Actress Esther Rolle garnered critical acclaim for her role as a tenacious Chicago housing project mother in the 1974 to 1977 television series Good Times. She provided a steadying force on screen, balancing out the show's lighter moments of comedy. JJ, played by Jimmie Walker. Evans. Rolle regarded this equilibrium as important. Real Black families' beliefs, hardships, and dignity should be shown on the show, she said time and time again, rather than only providing an outlet for amusement. However, creative conflicts started to negatively impact the show by the conclusion of 1977's fourth season. Good Times had strayed too far from its initial intent, and Rolle was quite vocal about her disapproval. She thought the show lost some of its gravity and depth as JJ's pranks and catchphrases became more prominent. Nobody dismissed her worries. At the height of the show's popularity, Rolle made the difficult decision to depart in protest. She showed her strong convictions by her daring move. In her opinion, the show devalued the Black experience for the sake of entertainment, and she would never be a part of it. When she left, the show's tone and audience response were noticeably different. Nevertheless, she returned for the series last season in 1978 after discussions. 1979. Even while some of the old animosity was still there, her return showed how much of an impact she had and how producers realized Good Times was missing its matriarch. Bringing the same unwavering honesty and power to her role as before, she helped bring the series to a close by reiterating the importance of family. A prolific film and TV actress, Esther Rolle kept busy throughout the 80s and 90s. The Incredible Journey of Dr. Meg Laurel, 1979, Summer of My German Soldier, 1978, and the highly praised film Rosewood, 1997, which depicted a racially motivated slaughter in 1920s Florida, were among her significant projects. She meticulously selected each part she played, mirroring her aspiration to be a part of initiatives that addressed issues of social truth and historical significance. When Summer of My German Soldier aired in 1990, Rolle won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a miniseries or special for her portrayal. An actress who had put her career and craft ahead of her fame deserved this honor. She has spent her career honing her ability to give nuanced and complex characters emotional depth, and her performance in that part was another example of this. The 1998 film Down in the Delta, directed by Maya Angelou and starring poet and author Maya Angelou, was her last appearance. In keeping with Rowley's aesthetic ethos, the film dealt with issues of redemption, family, and memory. She gave a moving performance. Resting on a foundation of grace and wisdom, it was the last testament to her extraordinary gift. Tragically, Esther Rolle died in Culver City, California on November 17, 1998, from complications connected to diabetes. This was just 9 days after she celebrated her 78th birthday. The end of a life characterized by unwavering dedication to her principles, perseverance, and honesty came with her passing. Despite not having any biological children of her own, her impact on stage, television, and in real life is immeasurable, and her legacy will live on. In Rolle's conflicts, disagreements, and scandals, the influence of Esther Rolle on Good Times and American television in general is immense. She made an everlasting impression on popular culture with her commitment to depicting Black people who are powerful and morally upright. However, there was some turmoil behind the scenes that Rolle had to endure. The show's artistic director, the writing staff, and even the industry that had previously lauded her became increasingly contentious as the show gained immense popularity. A fight for honesty, representation, and respect eventually erupted from what started as a revolutionary chance to broadcast genuine Black family life to mainstream television. The subsequent scandals and challenges demonstrated how seriously Rolle took her responsibility to uphold the honor of the people she played. After the first few seasons of Good Times, one of the most talked about and controversial topics was the show's trajectory. Esther Rolle knew going in that the show would focus on the actual hardships endured by a low-income African-American family. She thought Good Times could tackle complex social issues like racism, poverty, and family harmony head-on. As Jimmie Walker's character, JJ, became more and more integral to the show's comedic tone, Rolle could feel her initial vision fading. His flamboyant attire, dependence on his catchphrase, "Dynamite," and exaggerated mannerisms made JJ a beloved figure among fans. However, Rolle frequently veered toward caricature with his comedic acts. She said that the show had lost its focus on serious storytelling and had instead become a vehicle for comedy. Her 1975 open interview with Ebony magazine expressed the fears of many Black community members who were concerned about the representation of JJ perpetuated harmful preconceptions rather than questioning them. The writers and producers took note of this feedback. Those concerned with ratings and audience participation were especially irritated by Rolle's discontent. The success of JJ had cemented the show's position in television annals and attracted a younger demographic. The fact that the price was too exorbitant, meanwhile, did not budge Rolle. She thought the show's core values were being compromised. She finally took the tough decision to depart Good Times in 1977, toward the conclusion of its 4th season, due to the severity of this creative conflict. She quit because she felt the show had abandoned its initial mission. In addition to the disagreements around JJ's character, Rolle and the writers also had persistent disagreements on the cultural authenticity of the show. She cared profoundly about the Evans family embodying virtues like self-control, respect for one another, and integrity. Instead of being shown as separate entities, she thought the family should stand together in the face of adversity. Rolle was vocal in her requests for screenplay revisions, particularly those that would emphasize the family's wit and resiliency. Conflicts arose between her and the creative team due to her doggedness. Norman Lear, a producer known for pushing boundaries, was not always able to understand the complexities of Black family dynamics, in her opinion. Esther Rolle, too, found money to be a cause of frustration. She felt underappreciated in terms of pay and acknowledgement, even though she was the focal point of enjoyable occasions. She then voiced her disapproval in interviews about how the show's ratings and financial success seemed to favor its younger cast members and humorous aspects. Given Florida Evans's significance as a symbol of courage for Black women and mothers worldwide, she felt her work as the series' emotional center deserved more than what she earned. Despite how she was occasionally portrayed by the public, Rolle never shied away from taking her work seriously. She was frequently typecast in Hollywood despite her education, involvement in Black cultural circles, and long history of classical theater. The industry kept casting her in domestic worker or maid parts, which didn't allow her to play to her full potential. This part angered the actress, who had hoped for a long time to break out of the limited acting opportunities for Black actresses. Neither did she remain silent about her belief that these stereotypes perpetuated harmful notions and ignored the nuance of Black women's lives. Rolle spoke out against Hollywood's lack of support for serious Black actresses and its reliance on antiquated depictions. She criticized the casting process for lacking ambition and creativity, despite her strong and dignified performances in those parts. Many people could relate to her criticisms and were proud of her for standing up to the systemic oppression that Black performers endured. Jimmie Walker finally speaks out about his rivalry with Esther Rolle. Now that he's 78 years old, Jimmie Walker has spoken up about the long-simmering animosity between him and Esther Rolle, which has defined their time together on Good Times. who created the breakthrough sitcom, was a mystery to fans for a long time. However, up until this point, Walker had kept a low profile on the matter. Walker made an unexpected confession in an interview that caught even the show's most devoted fans off guard. The entire time Esther was there, I honestly don't recall ever having a conversation with her. Their chasm was further widened by that succinct but impactful confession. Disagreements about ideas or methods of doing business weren't the only thing at play. There was in fact no real-life relationship between them, even though their on-screen personas had sweet and funny moments as a mother and son. Their mutual lack of speech conveyed a great deal. The uncomfortable reality wasn't something Walker avoided. His subsequent remarks revealed his deep appreciation and professional respect for Esther Rolle and co-star John Amos, regardless of the strained nature of their working relationship. All of them are excellent performers. He gushed over their extraordinary skill. Even though it was modest, his recognition was significant, given the public's impression that there may have been residual animosity. There was no evidence of resentment in his explanation for the emotional and interpersonal distance he experienced. He instead stressed that the main cause was deep-seated cultural and creative differences that only became wider and more noticeable as the show's success increased. The development of Walker's character, JJ, was important in causing that split. Evans. In the original plan, JJ would have had a supporting role within the family ensemble. Became the show's breakout star after a short time thanks to his electric personality, physical humor, and the now iconic tagline, Dynamite. The cast was irritated by the change in emphasis, even though viewers loved him. The original goal of the show was to show a black family living in poverty in an honest and respectable way, and Rolle and Amos believed that That message was watered down by S's comic dominance and inflated antics. Walker admitted as much, saying that the increasing focus on his character was a major source of stress for him. Incredible hardship was overcome by us. I believe they murdered the goose that laid the golden egg if we had had any sort of love like that, he thought to himself. According to what he said, good times lead to success. Much of it via JJ. There may have been a sacrifice in internal cohesiveness because to SS popularity. Walker seemed to be implying that the show's impact and longevity may have been even higher if the creative staff and cast had resolved their issues. His candor continued beyond that. In an interview she gave to Ebony magazine in 1975, in which she harshly criticized JJ's character, he addressed a particularly scathing remark. Even though he's 18 years old, he has no job. He is illiterate. I despise the images that teach black youth that standing on a corner and shouting dynamite would get you far, but he doesn't seem to share my sentiment. Walker used an understanding tone toward her comments instead of a defensive one. He conceded that her annoyance was ideological rather than personal. He went on to say that her perspective was driven by a deep love for the show's potential, suggesting that her disapproval of JJ's portrayal was part of a larger struggle over the representation of black life on television during a pivotal period of social transformation. As Walker pointed out, there was a broader discussion taking on in American media at the time of their creative differences. It went beyond mere taste and humor. The focus was on meaning, communication, and effect. The idea for Good Times came from Rolle and Amos, who wanted it to provide a voice for African American families, confronts issues of racism, poverty, and the power of solidarity and tenacity. Conversely, Walker's approach was more focused on comedy and entertainment, which was attracting a huge following. Disagreement arose over the show's identity on a philosophical and interpersonal level as a result of these differences. Walker was disappointed that the underlying tensions were never adequately resolved. He said that if everyone on the show had been more honest and respectful, they might have been able to put their differences aside. He reiterated, "We ran through tremendous adversity," highlighting the fact that they had a rocky 4.5 years of collaboration. He implied that, in the end, the show suffered because of the creative division, which may have hampered its artistic and cultural potential. Walker touched on the show's and its stars' legacies, recognizing the influence of Rowley and Amos beyond their comedic roles. Although he remained a regular cast member until Amos' departure in Season 3 and Rowell's return and departure, he admitted that he emotionally disconnected from the rest of the group. The fact that Walker was the lone main cast member who skipped Esther Rowell's funeral in 1998 is a damning admission. He didn't go into great detail, but he did show some remorse for being absent, a subtle acknowledgement that their unfinished estrangement persisted even after she died. However, Walker lavished praise on their abilities. In particular, he praised John Amos for his outstanding performances in Roots and The West Wing, describing Amos as fantastic and implying that Amos's ability was always undeniable. "I believe we would have been in much better shape if he had that same attitude with us," Walker added. His tone was not one of bitterness, but of what-ifs, a recognition that pride, ego, and differing visions can sometimes overshadow even the best intentions. In this rare and reflective interview, Walker shed light on the complex relationships behind Good Times. He refrained from blaming or trying to rewrite history, instead offering context by sharing his experience honestly and nuancedly. According to Walker, the conflict was never about acting ability or star power, but rather about purpose. Good Times lost cohesion when its original mission was eclipsed.